okay.
Yeah.
Just got a message. So if you have something on your lap, you might want to put it on the side and get yourself comfortable and
Well,
allow your.
where the computer is, we are cleaning out our middle room, so I have no room right now.
Do the best you can. I'm talking online, and we have, how many people do we have at this point?
21.
21 people at this point. We had problems last month, so
Yeah.
some people gave up on us, but at any rate, close your eyes and get yourself in a comfortable position and allow yourself to go where you go when you go. Welcome back. Hi, everybody. Good to see you all. I was just explaining that we had a difficulty last time, which the Zoom link was faulty, and we had to send another one last minute, and a lot of people didn't get it. So, but we're here this time, and we're glad to see you all. We well, let's see. So much has happened. I was in the hospital for 6 weeks and had 3 surgeries and all kinds of stuff. So life has been complicated. I'm better. I had a wound vac for 5 weeks and I just got rid of that yesterday. Thank you, God. We divorced, and I'm now no longer tethered to a wound vac. Very happy about that. And hopefully we'll be completely healed in a few weeks. But because of so much going on, and Sharon assures me she's going to touch on a little bit of this, so much going on, which is wonderful. We're going to take July and August off and not have a meeting in July and August. I'll try to remember to say it again before the end of the meeting for the people who joined during the time. But we're just going to have the 2 months off and see where we go in September, because things are so shaky and so much happening, and I just need some downtime to heal, and I think that'll be okay. So I was thrilled that I turned you off, Jen. I
Okay.
see you're on, but I don't see you.
Right. I don't think the camera's working right.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Jen Rocky is a new experiencer that I spoke with this week who had an experience in January, and she's trying to figure out how to get on. So welcome her. A lot of familiar faces. Glad to see you all here. We still have continuing obligations. We have expenses to pay for our the various services that send out the emails and so on and so forth, even if we're not here. So I hope you all will remember that and contribute. Because of the problems last month, we had no donations at all. I don't think I've been to the post box yet because I haven't been able to get out, but I've been home now 2 weeks, and I should be able to get out and about very soon. So we'll get caught up. And meanwhile, I started to say I was so happy that Sharon moved to Evanston and is willing to be our speaker today. I've known Sharon for 20, 30 years. I don't know, a long time. She formerly led Austin, Texas IANDS, and my son lived in San Antonio some 20 years ago, and I used to go down there all the time, and I would go and visit her too. So it's wonderful that she's here. She has her own near-death experience that she can tell us about, as well as the fabulous work that she's done over the years. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Sharon, and thank you for coming and welcome. It's all yours.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you for carrying this organization for nearly a quarter of a century. Not meaning to make you feel old or anything.
I'm not old. I just had my 79th birthday.
Thank you.
2 days ago.
Happy birthday. Thank you for the flute music that set such a great mood. I really love that. And I presented at Chicago IANDS in 2005, so that was 17 years ago. I co-founded Austin IANDS in 1990, so that was 32 years ago. And you'll see a guy named Clem Schmidt on your screen in a nice Hawaiian shirt. And he took over and kept Austin, Texas alive as Central Texas IANDS and is the coordinator there. Wonderful man. I'm grateful that he's here today too. And I understand that Jen is a brand new experiencer. Is that correct?
She's muted.
Okay, all right. So
Here.
Jen, are you a new experiencer?
Yes, I am. 4
Brand new.
months.
Okay, so we'll touch upon that because that's so important from my perspective, that we're here to support those who have gone through this experience and have to integrate it.
Okay.
It's for me, I had my experience in 1970. Well, my major experience in 1977.
Wow.
And so I'm still integrating it 45 years later. And it's my favorite group of people to be with are people in their mid-40s. So I think I got rebooted. I joke and say that I'm a 45-year-old in a 70-something-year-old body. And it would be better if I were a 70-year-old in a 45-year-old body, but okay. You take
Yeah. I'm a 80-year-old in a 50-year-old body, so.
Okay, gotcha.
But I had a destiny experience. I met the doctor that saved my life the other night. So that.
Let's talk about that when we do the group discussion, okay?
Sure. Okay.
Can we do that?
Wonderful.
All right, Jen.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So near-death experiences, are there any other who are recent? Or are these all people who've been coming to this meeting before? Do you know, Diane?
I don't know for sure. I sent the email out to 3,500 people.
Right. So I wanted to get a show of hands of how many different times people have heard a near-death account. Because I've heard hundreds of near-death accounts at this point. And over time, with the ripening of it, because it has not stopped, it's a continuous evolution, this experience. It's there's this cartoon going around of a guy in a wizard's cap and a cloak on a subway, and it says, after you've had an enlightening experience, it's hard to fit in. And that is true. It is hard to fit in, and it is hard, it's impossible to put into words the experience itself, but even more important, the growth that takes place after the experience. To me, that's the most important part. So I actually stopped telling my experience after 20 years of telling it, from 1990 to 2010, or maybe even earlier than that. I stopped telling it because I began to realize that there are no words. Words kill it. And that because I'm in a body and I have a brain and I have patterns and habits, that experience was interpreted to a filter, and everybody has a filter. And so the filter eliminates the truth of the experience to some extent, and it personalizes it. It adds ego to it. And so we get the different stories, but we have common elements for many, many people. Even if it's a what we would call a non-light experience, if it's a difficult experience, there is a sense of being dead or approaching death. There is often a tunnel. I certainly had a tunnel, and it was wonderful. Total blackness, velvety. I was speeding through it, and I loved it. I like speed, and the dark was so comfortable. There's the sense of light, the presence of spiritual beings of various names and types, of knowledge, and of return, which for me was excruciatingly painful. When I was told that I was going to return, I was like a petulant little girl. I just went. And my two closest friends who died when we were teenagers, both died horrible deaths, but they were there not in body, but in essence, not in personality, but in essence. And they appeared to be in two opalescent ovals of shimmering light. And the quality of each of them, not the identity, but the sense of them, was in this egg of undulating brightness. And they said to me, "It's all right, Shat." Now, when they said that, it was in my mind. I didn't hear a voice. And "It's all right, Sha," which was my nickname in childhood. "You need to go back." And with that, I slammed back into my body, and it was like trying to fit my whole body into a salt shaker. If you've ever gotten your hand stuck in a jar and it gets tight and you can't get it out, it was far worse than that. And I didn't fit. And for me, the after effects and the understanding that lives within me, kind of like that shimmering, can't give language to reality. That's what's important, that the truth is not in my story. The truth is in the experience, which is so far beyond my story. But for the respect that a lot of people here like to hear the whole story, I'll be happy to share that with you. I agree to do that. And with your agreement and understanding that I don't see this as wholly true. I see it as something far beyond my capacity to understand, filtered through my limited ability to understand and to put it into terms that work for me. Okay? Please agree to all that. So I took the, recently, for some reason, I felt the need to paint aspects of my near-death experience. Sorry, that's, I gotta go back here. Hold on, that was a mistake. I'm going through all my paintings and I don't want to do that. I want to go back to my original one. Let's see. There we go. Full screen. So this is, I'm not going to be able to do it full screen because Zoom is blocking that. I was alone in my cabin in Western Colorado. And I woke up on the floor of the cabin. And I was in a fetal position. I don't remember falling. I don't remember collapsing. I don't know what happened. I know that I was in pain. And I know that I was using my mantra, thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God. I had been living out in the wilderness prior to this, and I was extremely spiritual. And I had read all sorts of spiritual books. I started reading Edgar Cayce when I was 9 or 10. I have always been this way. Some people, I think I perhaps was dead in the womb because my mother had said that they couldn't find a heartbeat, and so they induced me. And I've always been this way. I've never understood how people could be mean or cruel or unkind in any way, shape, or form. And I've always admired people who, like Helen Keller, who could rise above difficulties and shine. So anyway, back to 1977, I passed out again 2 more times. The third time that I came to, I knew without a doubt that I was going to die, that I was dying, and I was completely at peace with that. And because my mother always told me that you wear good underwear so that if you ever have to go to the hospital, you were not wearing bad underwear, I didn't want my friends to find me lying on the floor in a heap. And so I decided I was going to bring myself over to the couch, and I realized that my legs really weren't working. So I was using my arms, and I had lived in the wilderness. I was felling my own trees. I could run uphill carrying 2 5-gallon jugs of water. I was 108 pounds and I was muscular. So I used my arms to drag myself across the floor, and I pulled myself up on the couch, and I folded my arms very dramatically, you know, drama queen. Said, and then I flew out the top of my head and went into the tunnel that I described earlier. And it went on for a very long time. And then I began to slow, and the tunnel, rather than narrowing, opened up like a flower bulb. And I was hovering in the cosmos, looking at the stars. I was just floating out there in the starry heavens. And pretty smart. I was raised in New York City, where you get a lot of strokes for being intellectual. So I asked a lot of questions, and I said inwardly, "Boy, I traveled so far, so fast, how come the stars aren't closer?" Not really at the time even thinking about the vastness of the cosmos. And when I said that, if you see the caricature to the right of this painting, you see the portal, and there was a portal that opened up to my right. And I thought, I want to be there. And at that point, I didn't travel, I just was there. And I went through the portal, and I wasn't grounded, but I wasn't floating. I can't tell you what it was. I was in a state. And in that state, I was my essence, my I am. I was not Sharon. I didn't have a gender. didn't have an age. I had no identity that I could define. And there was a group presence in some sort of a container-like thing. The male presence was in the front, the female presence was behind. The male presence was the one that was communicating, the female presence was holding the field. There were other beings. There was everything, I believe, that is and can be present. And the love that radiated to me, for me, was beyond anything I have felt before or since, although I still feel it to this day, just that the earthly world kind of gets in the way with all of its busyness. But it hasn't left. I don't feel like there's a place over there and here. I believe it's all one continuous thing. And when we talk about dimensions, to me, that's just the breadth and width and depth of our understanding is what dimensions are. They're not different places. So there's nowhere to go. It's all here. But this, even though there's no time or space, which I came back knowing for a fact, or what I think is a fact, because I don't really know anything, was that there was a sequence to this. And so I was bathed in this love, tractor beamed to this love. And I was aware of the light. And the light was, there was a center to the light, but it was just as brilliant all the way in the periphery, in every direction. And I'm like, okay, here's that intellect again, stupid intellect, excuse me. And I thought, how can a light have a center that's equally bright as a periphery? That's not possible. And that thought broke my connection to the Love Fest. And I was disappointed that that was broken, but that was broken and I broke it. And when I broke it, I felt like I was still looking. I was still doing my best to connect to this presence, these beings of love in front of me. I felt like a river coming at me from the left. And I didn't pay attention to it, but I felt it. And it entered right about at my shoulder. And as it did, it was these bubbles, which these bubbles represent that, but they were iridescent light-filled bubbles, and you cannot get with paint how bright and light these bubbles were. And they were music. Every single one was music. And I heard this music that was so profound that for 3 years, I could not listen to any earthly music. I gave away 347 long playing albums after that because nothing matched that music. And along with the music and all these brilliant colors that were effervescent, and they bubbled and they burst, they were ecstasy, they were joy, they were bliss, and they were me. That was the content of my body. And at this point, if you see, there is a white form here. I'm still made out of light, and these bubbles are inside of this light body. I no longer had feet that I was aware of. I was in a gown of white, and I started floating. And as I started floating, I was floating towards a temple, this brilliant temple of light. And there was actually in front of the temple, but it didn't work well in the painting, was one single human individual of light sitting on a bench in a park-like setting. And that individual knew me, and I knew that individual. Everything about him, if they felt it was a he, I knew was inside. We were one, and yet we were separate. It was a paradox. And even though we were completely acknowledged one another. There was also the idea that I'm on my own path and I need to have this individuality. So for me, our individuality here on earth is really important. But when I pass someone on the street and they don't acknowledge me, it still pains me, because I don't understand that, because we're one being. Just like every cell, if you think of these bubbles as cells in your body, every cell in Diane's body has the right to say, I am Diane. And that's absolute truth. And each of those cells is important while it's there. But none of them by themselves is really Diane. It's the composite. So that's the experience. I got that. And I'm floating towards this temple. And I go up these 3 very shallow, very wide steps. And I become, as I'm going there, I know everything. I know everything. Don't ask me now because I can't remember, but I know everything. The answer to everything is so clear and simple. And I go up to the cornerstone, and it is huge. It's probably 4 feet wide and maybe 3 feet high and deep, and it's made entirely of light, and I can't see through it. And I ask, how can that be? And I was told that all matter is simply light and sound, and that the thought uses light to create a blueprint, to create a form, which is empty. It's just drawing the 3-dimensional lines, if you will, the shape of the thing. And then in the beginning was the word tone, not vibration. Vibration's an effect, an effect. Tone starts moving molecules and chemicals and elements and fills the form. And I discussed this with a quantum physicist friend of mine. He said, yeah, I do that mathematically, but that's about it. That's it. All of matter is simply light and sound with a lot of space. And so the next thing I know, in hypnosis, I know that I went into that building and that I met other beings in that building, and that I received teachings in that building, but that was not part of my near-death experience, so I leave that part out because I don't want to embellish on it. The next thing I know, I am no longer in the realm of light, as if there's an invisible curtain. It's invisible, but it's clearly, I am not there anymore. I am now someplace else. And this incredibly huge male presence, I can't even give it, attribute size to it, many times larger than a normal human being, is at a distance from me. And telepathically, I say to this being, you're the representative of God. And he responds, yes, I am. And this is when I'm told, you need to go back. And this is when I go, I don't want to go back. Right? And this is when my friends say, those who took the form of my friends in this life say, it's okay, Sha, you need to go back. And I slam back into my body. And I lay on the couch, still on the couch, absolutely just blown out of the water. I mean, I'm just, not focused, not aware, until I hear some crashing of glass and I see a hand come through the window and someone opening the doorknob. And the coworker is there and basically says, where have you been? You haven't shown up for work for 3 days. So I don't know how long I was gone. I was kidnapped by some friends and taken to an aura balancer in Alamogordo, New Mexico. About 6 months later, he was a clairvoyant, still alive, still very famous, who said, you went as far into death as you can go and still come back. This friend called my boss. My boss came over. I lived in Western Colorado with a bunch of hippies. My boss assumed it was a drug overdose, although I was not doing drugs. It was very common in that community for people my age to be doing drugs. I was not. And so she, instead of taking me to the doctor, she drove me around so that it would wear off. And I knew this because at that point, I heard everything everyone was thinking. I felt everything everyone was feeling. And I was incompetent for close to 3 years. From that point, I lost a large chunk of my memory. I remembered people and places, but not events, no pictures. I became partially aphasic. I could speak, but I could not remember most words, especially nouns. And in addition to working at the food bin as the boss who picked me up at the natural food store, I also worked for the Delta County Independent as a writer, freelance journalist, and for the North Fork Times as an editor. And I lost the ability to read and write because I became profoundly dyslexic. The letters not only turned around, they danced in the air. They came off the page. And it was only a few years ago that I realized that it was a miracle. I was describing this experience to a colleague who asked me about it. We were sharing a room, and I said, the letters were coming off the page because they're just atoms. They were just moving. I said, what the miracle is the book stayed on the table. Right? So I'm aware that I'm experiencing a solid world, but I know that it's not solid. And I am glad that I'm separate because a cell needs a membrane. It needs a healthy membrane to be separate in order to function. But I'm only functioning in cooperation with all you other cells out there. Right? So I'm grateful to be part of our vast, beautiful body. And we might not always feel like everybody and everything is part of this vast, beautiful body. It doesn't seem like that at times. I still hold that that's true. So that is that's the story that doesn't represent the totality, because I realize there's my understanding has grown as my knowledge has shrunk. My ability to say I know has diminished to nothing. And I cannot describe it, I can only be it. So I'm open now to questions, or I can continue with other topics.
Why don't you continue and save maybe the last half hour or something for questions?
Okay, all right. So the gift for me, besides being incompetent for almost 3 years, I lost all my jobs. My goddaughter's parents were called back from Kentucky and moved back to Western Colorado to move in with me and take care of me. The experiences I was having were not fun. I still have whiteout in my memory around this time, and I can't figure out the chronology to this day. A lot of it doesn't make sense to me. It's like it mixed up dimension, mixed up places, right? There's a kind of a stew of memory there. Maybe like those bubbles, it's hard to pick out the individual events. And then then I was kidnapped and taken to this aura balancer, and everybody else thought it was fabulous. I mean, he spent 5 hours retrieving my memories. And the people who were present to hold the light said it was the most profound experience, that it ended like in the middle of the night, and they said they couldn't sleep because it was so great. I just went back to the room and cried because I just felt just as bad as I had before. And I cried almost all the time. And there was one time when, and this is a small town of 800, little farming community, where I had gone to start an organic fruit farm with my friends. And I was at that point sharing a house with another friend. And I was babysitting her daughter, Sharmi. And Ponda was working at Joe's Generic Bar, which is the only bar in town. And so I know that it's night. I know about what time it is, and I'm sitting on the couch, just sort of being, and at the same time, I'm being raped. And I know I'm not being raped because I'm sitting on the couch in the house, and I'm fine, and I'm being raped. And I don't understand this. And so by the time Ponda came home, I'm in my bedroom with a blanket over my head, sitting there in abject fear, phobia, just as confused as can be. The next morning, I went to visit my friend Lucy, who also worked at the bar. They were the only 2 barmaids there. And I knew that Lucy was seeing a psychiatrist. And I asked for the name of her psychiatrist. And she asked me why. And I told her why. And she said, "What time did you have that experience, Sharon?" And I told her about what time it was. And she said, "A woman left the bar last night and she was raped." Now, a rape in that town was like unheard of. It was just a one-off experience. But I went to the psychiatrist anyway. I had to drive all the way to Grand Junction, which was almost an hour and a half away. And I went to the psychiatrist and I told what I could. And I personally think that that psychiatrist was a plant, an angel in the guise of a psychiatrist, because the psychiatrist said to me, and I had seen a doctor for my crying who wanted to give me Valium, and I had thrown that away prior to this because I knew I wasn't depressed, I just homesick. And the psychiatrist said to me, "You have all your buffers have all been blown. It's going to take you 7 years to get them back. And when you do, I hope you go into the helping professions. You're probably the sanest person I've ever met." And I'm sitting there blubbering away, right? He says, "Crazy people do not come to psychiatrists willingly to tell them that they're crazy." The aura balancer told me the same thing. All my buffers had been blown and it would take me about 7 years to get them back. And then I should go into the healing professions or the helping professions. And he also predicted I would receive a scholarship to become a Waldorf teacher, which is true, because at close to 3 years after my NDE, I realized I'm going to have to start fending for myself again, even though this was difficult to do. And there was a CETA grant, which is a government grant that they give to a company to hire somebody. And the only CETA grant available in this small area, the North Fork Valley, was at a Waldorf school. So I showed up for my appointment with the 2 teachers, and they'd ask me questions and I couldn't answer them because I still was having trouble with words. And plus I could hear everything they were thinking. And when you can hear what everybody is thinking and what everybody is saying, and white men speak with forked tongue, what they're thinking and what they're saying is not necessarily the same thing. It's crazy making. It made me run away from some of my closest friends. So I'm there, I can't answer the questions. I hear them thinking that what a waste of time it was to have her come, but we've committed to the day. And so they sent me out to the backyard to be with the children. You know what's great about children? What they think is what they say. So they go, why are your teeth green? How come you have a little bump on your nose? And there was no cognitive dissonance. And everything they wanted that they didn't articulate, I heard, and I gave them everything they wanted to make them happy. And I got hired on the basis of my relationship to the children. And guess what? What do children do? They draw, they sing, they dance, they knit, they make things. Guess what knits your brain back together? All of these wonderful activities. So here I am with these children. It's a safe place for me to be. And my brain is healing at the same time. And 6 months later, the 2 teachers depart, and I've got the class to myself. And the mentors come along and say, I'm sorry, but you're not really Waldorf trained. So you need to go get to the Waldorf school. Lo and behold, I spend 3 years in the Waldorf school and get a scholarship to finish. That's how I went to Austin. I became a Waldorf teacher. And I was still faking it. I was still dyslexic. I was still having issues with words, but I was smart. And at 27 years old, I had learned a lot. I knew what I was supposed to be doing. And I knew that my brain had been damaged. And I knew it was not my intelligence, it was my perceptual ability. So I started studying everything I could on the brain. And as I'm teaching Waldorf, this guy shows up at our school who wants to teach brain gym. And he wants to work with the kids. And I say, you're not touching my children, you can show me. And he does this, what's called the brain gym balance on me. And it was 7 years, almost to the date. And he does this session with me, and I could actually feel my feet on the earth. And I remember, I didn't say it out loud, but I thought, spaceship Sharon has just landed. I can see, I can hear, and I started to actually be able to dial phone numbers again, because we had dial phones back then. And I had taught myself to read and write, but now it was easier. And I was still having all kinds of psychic experiences. I was still feeling everybody and everything, but I was getting better at handling it. I just pretended I was a spy. And so I taught Waldorf education, and then I got invited to learn something called Mozgatova method, which is neurosensory motor reflex integration. And 14 years later, I felt like, 14 years after my near-death experience, I'm back, I'm here, I'm functioning, I'm whole. And I did a presentation in 1995 at for IANDS in San Antonio. I still have the t-shirts, Diane. I have a red one and a blue one. They're still in good shape. And deep in the heart of Texas. And it was on the importance of body-brain connection if you have a near-death experience. So for 40 years, I didn't think unless I wanted to. You know how meditation is supposed to be the empty mind? The goal of Zen and everything is empty mind. I had an empty mind. It was filled with light. I felt light and love, that's all. Unless I wanted to think. So I called it thinking on an as needed only basis. And that's what I was teaching. That your brain is great for Earth, but it's useless beyond Earth. And I still teach that. And then about 4 months before the election, I started having nightmares. And I usually just fall asleep easily and had pleasant dreams, but I was having nightmares. And those nightmares, an anxiety arose in me. And I remembered all the prophecies that I had received. Oops, that's not where I want to go. Back to him. And I had been shown the future many times in my life. And early in my life, I was looking on in horror from far away. Later in my life, I was in the midst of it, bringing comfort and ease. Now, while I was in Colorado, I had the great opportunity to meet with a gentleman named Thomas Banyakaya, who was a Hopi spiritual elder. And he was the one who encouraged me to go back into the world. I had been deeply, deeply spiritual. My near-death experience made me more practical. That's why I went to college. That's why I got a master's degree. That's why I learned all of these healing modalities. I realized I had all of eternity to be in the spirit world and only this opportunity to be in this form at this time. And so before and after the election, I could not turn off my head. My anxiety was about all these things. And I started telling people, we can make a difference. If we don't go to the pain will come to us. And so I devoted a lot of my life to going to where the pain is. And Thomas, the Hopi spiritual elder, of course, got me interested in the Hopi prophecies. And this is one of the Hopi prophecies. Many will appear to have lost their souls in these final days. So intense will be the nature of the changes, be that those who are weak in spiritual awareness will go insane, for we are nothing without spirit. So in all the political turmoil that we're in, I feel that the answer is not in politics, it's in spiritual awareness, it's in our consciousness. I don't care what the political beliefs are if we're not sitting in the truth, being the truth. We don't know the truth. We can only be it. And so I've talked to a lot of people my age, and we've been through a lot. We've been through many things, and we're looking at each other going, I never expected this. I never expected life to look like this. Is crazier than anything we've ever been through, right? So this is I'm going to do some more screen sharing again. This was a painting I did a couple of years ago, and it's called What Are We Doing? It's like mind-boggling what's going on. And what I was told was that most of the things were preventable. Some of them were possible. Many were probable. And some we couldn't take back because we'd gone too far. And I've likened it to driving on the highway and you're going too fast and too close, and the car in front of you slams on the brakes. You are going to run into it. But if you actually are preventative, and if you take precaution and you're going a decent speed and you have enough distance, you can prevent what's happening. And for me, the whole purpose of prophecy is to prevent, to just make people aware. Now, my master's degree is in health and wellness promotion. So if I say to somebody, okay, if you keep doing that, you are going to get sick. If you keep eating those hamburgers and cheeseburgers and French fries and Coke, you have diabetes, you have blocked arteries, you're headed for a heart attack. That's pretty easy to be prophetic about that. And what I find is most people don't want to hear it. We see photos of people smoking through their trachs, you know. It's very hard to convince people to change their way of being. But we can, and we can bring out those things in us that are truly who we are. I don't know that people realize how really great and amazing we humans are. Do you have any idea how magnificent you are? What your essence is has been covered over by these filters, by these veils of ignorance. And so let's see if I can show my screen again. Can you see that? Picture has changed. The similar group, these are called the protectors. These people are not horrified, they're not judging, they're being and they're watching and they're caring for. And what I was shown recently was that we need to stand shoulder to shoulder and hold the space of peace, of sanity, of kindness, of love, of light. As things shake and rumble and seem to be falling apart, our gift is to not do that. And you may have seen this in the past. This is part of the Hopi prophecy. This comes from Thomas. There is a river flowing now very fast. It's great and swift, and there are those who will be afraid. They will try to hold on to the shore. They will feel they are being torn apart and suffer greatly. Know that the river has its destination. The elders say we must push off into the middle of the river, keep our eyes open and our heads above water, see who is in there with you, and celebrate. At this point in history, we are to take nothing personally, at least of all ourselves. For the moment we do that, our spiritual growth comes to a halt. The time of the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves. Banish the word struggle from your attitude and vocabulary. All that we must do now must be done in a sacred way and in celebration. We are the ones we have been waiting for. So, you know, we talked about a great shift. It's hard to get speakers because it's not what we're doing. It's who we're being now. It's not what we're saying or our stories. It's our shared connection. We're a fabric. And we need to hold it together collectively. I can't do it. Not alone. So I've been working, if you will, I've had a group going for over 5 years telling people, look, it's going to get crazy and we're going to all kind of be surrounded by people who seem crazy and we're going to feel crazy. And what we got to do is just keep each other sane and at peace and calm so that, you know, I've volunteered with the Office of Emergency Management. You don't panic in an emergency, you keep your head. And we're emerging. We have an emergency, and we need to keep our head and our heart clear and full of light and full of love. And I won't preach anymore. And now I open it, and I want to be aware that Jen has had her experience recently, and I alluded to Jen how difficult it was for me for so many years, It's still not easy. It's still hard to fit in. And it's been hard since I was a little girl. I remember being given a choice at 7 between having friends or defending one of my neighbors who had we called her mental retardation in those days. And I had to make a choice between being a decent person and being popular. And that was a hard choice at age 7. So it's hard to sometimes integrate this idea of the vastness of what we have access to with the world that we seem to be in. Diane, did I cover what you wanted me to? You're muted, Diane.
Yeah, fiddling with it. Yes, basically.
What about?
I think if people want to write questions on the chat box, we can address specific questions.
Okay. Crazy people don't exist, only traumatized or misunderstood people. Okay. I've had this conversation. Diane knows that because of the work I do, that I deal with not only brain damaged individuals, but also deep trauma and PTSD. So 2 months after the Sandy Hook shooting, I was in Newtown working with Sandy Hook families, not alone, but with my colleagues. And we did this on a volunteer basis. And I went there 5 times for a total of 20 days. And I'm still traumatized by it. And there's some possibility that our group might be going to Uvalde to do the same work. Scarlett Lewis, whose son Jesse died a hero during Sandy Hook, saved 9 lives, 6-year-old boy. And he left a message for his mother on their farm, at their farm, on a green board in white chalk. It wasn't at the house, it was at the farm. So Scarlett didn't see it. She, waited hours to find out if her son was alive or dead. And she went to the farm later, and on the board in 6-year-old handwriting, spelled phonetically, was nurturing, healing, love. And he left a little written message for his brother, his older brother, that said, have a lot of fun. Several of the children knew what was going to happen. Jesse actually drew a picture of a guy with a gun prior to the experience. Some children asked for extra time with their, separated father. One girl who didn't usually wear dresses asked to wear a special dress, et cetera, et cetera. So Scarlett started the Choose Love Foundation, and she has shared social emotional learning, basically how to, her belief is that none of these have to happen if people needs get met, if they're not in crisis mode, because it's crisis mode that usually causes somebody to do this. That's her belief. And she believes that every single event can be prevented and that every single person can be helped. Now, I also spent 3 years teaching management skills in a federal penitentiary. When I started, it was maximum security. And there are psychopaths. And a psychologist, and I invited me to do the work, and I worked tandem with the psychologist. And I had taught her that she needs to ask them about their body, that in order to make great changes, you have to do it through the body, through the neurology. You have to be in touch with your body as well as with your intellect, because the brainstem, which is a survival center, doesn't understand words. It doesn't understand music, color. It doesn't understand anything except touch and movement. And so she sits down with the psychopath and she says, where do you feel that in your body? And the psychopath says, what? And she says, where do you feel that in your body? The psychopath says, I don't feel anything in my body. I don't feel my body. And so she does it again with another psychopath and gets the exact same answer. So I looked it up, and about 1% of the population is psychopathic. I don't know how much is sociopathic. So I think maybe there are beings who are so damaged that they can't be reached. And HeartMath Institute has done a lot of research on when the brainstem is too large and the frontal lobes are too damaged, that it's difficult to resonate to a higher ethic, to a greater, more beautiful way of being in the world. So that's been my occupation for the past couple of decades, is to assist people to get out of their survival brain and into the higher functioning lobes of the brain. And so crazy people don't exist. I don't know. The psychopath, it's like being born with cerebral palsy. When I was in the other world or in the other state of being, I knew all the answers and it was all okay. And when I get down here, it's as confusing as hell. You know, why does somebody have to have cerebral palsy? Why are there psychopaths? Why are we killing children? Okay, so definitely we have traumatized, misunderstood, and damaged people. And my goal is to do as much healing and support as I can to make it possible for a person to live the highest and best life they can live, myself and others. Does that answer your question, Tiffany? Or your statement, Tiffany? Tiffany's not here anymore?
She's still here, but she's muted.
Don't see her.
Can you unmute Tiffany?
I don't see her on
Yeah,
my.
sorry,
There you
I'm
are.
here. Yeah, I was just responding in the chat to someone else. I speak that because I think crazy is like an ableist term. I've had psychosis myself from trauma. So for me, I just try not to use that word. And I've studied a lot about trauma from my personal experience, but then also just, anytime there's an opportunity to learn about it, I'm like reading it and studying it. And like, I guess what I'm learning, and I have read books about, you know, quote unquote psychopaths, but like, I would say that's probably really, really rare. But I say, and I'm not even sure, I don't know how I feel about that, honestly, because I'm not labeled that way. And I don't know what the history of that person was developmentally, and I don't know if that existed when we were living in more tribal communities. I think a lot of the problems we have now is because we live in such an unhealthy society. So I feel like it's so sick that it's kind of hard to say, you know, we're disconnected from nature, we're disconnected from spirit. And I'm not sure if that would even exist if we had a healthier system, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Tiffany,
I don't think people are born.
If I will use the word crazy, I don't recall using it. I apologize.
Sure.
I don't even know what it was in reference to.
It was with the psychiatrist, and he said, you're not crazy because crazy people, you know.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't my word. It was his.
No, it wasn't you.
Okay.
It was more.
Right.
It's more that I encounter that a lot, and it just promotes stigma a lot. I feel like, so I try to be an advocate for people with severe mental health issues to kind of change the languaging.
There's a Native American word called Koyaanisqatsi, which means life out of balance, which is.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
From my history studies, I was saying before people got on, I fact checked history for Holt Ryan Reinhardt and Winston for 2 years, and I've spent time with some of the Native people, Indigenous people, and other people who've spent time with other Indigenous people. And they did have their problems as well. And they did have to sometimes banish people from their society. And the legend of the skinwalker, I actually wrote a novel recently about the skinwalker. That includes a thing about skinwalkers, which are people who use their magic abilities for evil, generally speaking. So the human experience is extreme. And we are living in exceptionally different times in terms of, I think my sense is, what I feel is that everybody knows that the planet is not healthy.
Right.
I use the word sick. Everybody knows it in their gut. And nobody wants to really acknowledge it and do anything about it. It's like the person who doesn't want to quit smoking or quit eating or quit whatever. And what we tend to do when we feel anxiety, which is what happened to me in the 4 months leading up to the election, is that this is my experience anyway, when we have anxiety and we don't deal with it, and it's repressed or suppressed, that's always the most painful to me when I feel it from another person, is there's a tendency to project it out and blame people because it reflects it, and I don't feel as bad because I've got someplace to put that negative energy rather than dealing with it myself.
Right.
So that's what I think is going on globally right now. I think everybody on the planet must be feeling to some extent.
I agree. I completely agree. Yeah.
That this is not a healthy state to be in, and nobody knows what to do with it. And is there a failure of leadership? I'm not going to answer that question. I'll let you all answer that. And we are the ones we've been waiting for. If leadership comes, it's going to come from us. And for me, that takes the form of holding a space of truth and peace and light and love. And I consider the psychic or the collective unconscious of Carl Jung, to be like a polluted pool right now. And you can stand there and rail at the pool, or you can start pouring clean water into it. The more clean water you put into it, the cleaner the pool gets. So I do my best to put clean, clear consciousness, which I call light and love, into the human pool, the psychic pool.
Me too.
Yay. Yay. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing your perspective too. I appreciate it.
Sarah, absolutely. Touch absolutely can reach people when words can't. I have testimonial from Jesse's mom, Scarlett Lewis. I have a video, and we went there 2 months after it happened, and we only had 4 people to work on by reference and the first day, and we ended up working with 67 to 70 people every day. And they were saying to us, and we didn't do words, they were saying repeating the story just made it worse. It re-traumatized them. We just told them, these memories aren't going to go away. These are real experiences, but your body doesn't need to go into bad health because of it. And so we worked with touch and movement, and they said, my skin stopped crawling for the first time. My child slept through the night for the first time. One man came with dangerously high blood pressure, and after one session, he went to his doctor. We were working in one of these kind of office complexes. His doctor was across the parking lot. Went to his doctor. His blood pressure had normalized so much, and the doctor had to take it again because couldn't believe that it had gone down so much. So yes, touch and informed body work. My particular work with my colleagues has to do with neurosensory motor reflex integration. So it's the very basis of our neurology through the body. And it makes a huge difference. Does that answer your question, Sarah?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I got to work with Jesse's brother, older brother, by myself. We usually worked in teams, but because I was a Waldorf teacher and had taught high school, the people thought that he'd be better off just with me. And he played computer games on his phone while I was working on his body the whole time. He didn't want to talk at all. Donna.
Donna?
Donna, do you have a question? You have a
Yeah,
hand up.
yeah, I have a situation. I don't know if you know me, but I was kidnapped like 30 years ago by my family. They accused me of being in the cult, which I wasn't. I did S, is what I did. And
Sorry, Ann.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's true. And they enabled me for a long time and lived in a condo for the last 18 years in downtown Wilmette. And my mother's 102. And there's money in my house and her house, but she needed it right away because she has a caregiver. So they had to sell my house on the spot. On the spot, I lost my house again. They put all my possessions in storage. And I'm in a nursing home. I've been here for 6 months and it is not livable. I'm very bright. I'm very spiritual. I'm very knowledgeable. But this is too much for me to bear. I am in prison. My roommate here is has, what do you call it? She's not brain damaged. She has,
Alzheimer's?
yeah, she's got Alzheimer's. And I could go on and on and on and on. The food is so horrible, it's making me sick. Now, I have a diagnosis of MS. I've had caregivers where I did all my stretches, all my programs to keep myself strong and healthy physically. And I'm a dance movement therapist, so I know what to do. But now I do nothing. And I'm like getting weaker and getting sicker from the food and crippling up. And this is unacceptable. And it's not necessary. But I'm stuck in this. I mean, 2 kidnappings in a lifetime is a bit much.
Where are you, Donna?
I'm in Buffalo Grove. And I am in deep trouble because I am ready to give up and I want to live. But this is hell. This is horrible.
I can totally relate. I had a surgery and I was in the hospital for a week, and then I went from there to a nursing facility for 5 weeks. And I hear what you're saying. I felt exactly that way. I felt I was in prison. I counted the minutes until I could get out. I thought I would never get out alive, truly.
Yeah, and me exactly. And I have no home to go back to. I have nothing. So sad.
It's very sad.
And there's nobody to talk to here. There's one nurse who works part-time. Nobody else will have a conversation. And there's barely a view out the window. And I had such a gorgeous apartment. You've been there.
Yes.
I don't know what to do. I really am in trouble. Really in trouble.
Donna,
Yeah.
I am fortunate that I'm not in that situation at this stage of my life anyway.
Yeah. Well,
And
I'm your age.
one of the things that, I don't know, I think it's because I have Jewish cells in my body, and
Well, I'm Jewish.
epigenetically,
Yeah.
these times are harrowing for me, but also ever since I was a child,
Yeah.
I have wondered if I was put into a concentration camp, would
Yeah.
I continue to be the person that I wanted myself to be? Would
Yeah.
I be capable of that? And one of the most important books I've ever read was Viktor Frankl's Man's
Yeah.
Search for
Yeah,
Meaning.
I've read it and I have to read it again now.
And
Yeah.
so I don't mean to make light of this, but I came up with a joke. I make bumper stickers. And the one joke I have is, as a deeply, and this does not apply to anybody here, as a deeply spiritual person, I don't judge assholes. The other one is that I am a deeply spiritual person until I get a calf cramp.
Until
And
you
then
get
a calf cramp, a cramp in my
Oh,
calf,
really? Yeah.
until I experience pain. And
Yeah.
then I'm tested. I'm so severely tested with nothing more than a calf cramp.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'm willing to sell my soul to the devil practically, just to make pain go away. So, right, Diane? It's so hard to maintain. I mean, it's easy to say I'm a spiritual being. It's easy to say I'm full of light and love until I have to deal with life's challenges.
Exactly.
And God bless you. I don't know that that has any meaning at all, but certainly you got a tough row to hoe there.
I do. I'm so strong and so true. But this is knocking me out for the first time in my life. For the first time in my life. I don't even get positioned. So sad. Because it doesn't be.
Diane, did you want to say something?
Peter Sternberg has put a note on the chat for you, Donna. He says contact the state of Illinois nursing home ombudsman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Might be worth doing.
And thank you, Donna, for sharing. I don't want to ignore Jen. If Jen needs to say anything about her recent experience, I want to make sure we have some time for her.
Okay.
Hi, I'm really glad to have found this group. Sorry, I don't have a video. My daughter has informed me that she hasn't hooked up the camera yet. But if I can give you a little bit background, I went through a 20-year period of severe back issues, debilitating, fighting doctors that wouldn't listen to me. But prior to that, I worked in law enforcement. First, I was a dispatcher. Then I worked as a clerk for many years. And when I got the back injury, it just destroyed my whole life. And recently, in the last 4 years, I've had 7 spinal surgeries and 1 that has left me with disabilities. But I had posterior fusion on January 22nd of this year. And never once in any of my surgeries have I ever thought about getting sepsis. And they sent me home that day due to COVID being high. So, I came home, I was feeling really good. Ate dinner, laid down. A couple hours later, my daughter tried to wake me and I was delirious, mumbling, couldn't stand up, screaming at her according to what she's saying, but I don't remember none of this. I did go in an ambulance to the hospital where they said I had sepsis, organ failure, kidney failure, loss of oxygen to the brain, lungs filled up with fluid. So I did enter a near-death experience at one point, and my situation was me floating in this grayish white space, and below me was dark, almost black, and I could see myself in the hospital bed, but around me I could see 10 of my family members that had passed away, and my dad, which I was a daddy's girl, and to know he was there. But my experience, I was being told this is not about them, they're here for you, but this is about you. And all the communication I was getting was telepathic. And I was told that I was awaiting a decision in this space. And sorry, getting emotional. I was told I was waiting a decision in this space. And I was also told that there's so many different areas, so many different places that a soul or your energy could end up. And I think it was explained that there's like different levels. And based on how much you or any person, how good you are to other people, and to how much help and worth you're doing while we're here. And that determines kind of where you're going to end up at first. There was a amazing, bright, super bright white light off to the left of me. And there was like twinkles of gold going through it. And I could see that far off, and I knew it was heaven. But then I knew this darkness was below me, and I knew it was bad. But finally, I was told that I need to go back because I need to be here for my daughter. The other day, I had an allergic reaction, and I went to the same hospital, and the doctor was the doctor that saved my life. And I was asking him about another doctor that I thought was the one who saved my life, but he looked into the records and he came back into the room and he said, no, it was me. And now I remember everything. And because I really wanted to know at what point I had the near-death experience. And he told me that my oxygen was just so low, they were ready to intubate me. And they put a really high amount of oxygen on me, and it started working. So they held off. But I lost 2 days, completely unconscious for 2 days. But as I woke up, every day I was remembering bits and pieces more because I still had really low oxygen. When I came home from the hospital, some horrifying things happened to me. I was seeing for like 3 days, I seen a shadow figure just running through my house at unimaginable speeds. That only lasted 3 days, but I've been having this reoccurring nightmare that my primary physician is telling me that it is associated with the near-death experience. And he was explaining to me how, some doctors feel about life and death and the near-death experience, which he believed that when I was floating over the bed. He believed that that's the point when the soul separates the body. But this nightmare, I will wake up screaming and shaking, and a lot of nights I just don't want to sleep. I try to stay up until the point where I pass out, so I won't dream. What I know of the dream is that I'm standing right outside of the darkest black space, and there's something horrifying in there. I could see like a shadowy figure, and then I wake up screaming. But since this experience, I've been doing a lot of researching myself. Near-death experiences, and some psychology books, and I don't know where I fit in anymore. I went through all those years of being, out of society, but now finally I'm out of pain. And I had this experience, and I know that I was told I have to do better in life. I have to be a better person. I need to give. And I got to a point where I just lost it one day. I got in this deep depression. Sorry. And it felt horrible because I didn't know what I should be doing. What was the meaning of me having this experience? So at this point, I'm still trying to figure out where I'm going to fit in, what I need to do.
Jen,
Yeah.
when you're being loving and giving, does that start with you?
Yes.
Okay. Are you being kind to yourself?
Probably not completely.
Are you being gentle with yourself?
Most of the time.
Are you being patient with yourself?
I tried to be very much, and I've really had to learn to be patient, because in the past, I had, the 2 jobs at one time, and I was a very active, energetic person. And
Yeah.
and since the disability, I've had to learn to slow my mind down to go to the pace of my body. And that was pretty difficult for a while, but I got there, and I learned patience.
Yeah, I keep telling the 23-year-old inside of myself, I look in the mirror and I say, please take into account the body that you're in now, please, please, because you keep hurting me.
Right.
To be 23. Aging is its own kind of challenge. And we're all looking at death and destruction. I was given assignments, spiritual assignments, once a year usually. In 1 year, it was studying decay, death, and destruction, and just looking at it. And it's part of life.
Right.
Yeah, and that's hard to take. As far as the dark spirit, what I usually do, my next door neighbor, when I had a house in Texas, was a near-death experiencer, and she took in her niece after parents were killed in a car crash. And the niece kept seeing this guy looking in the mirror, this being, the spirit, all bloody. And when I got my house, I saw a stream of ghosts basically walking through my house. Just, it was like it was a path. And so I cleared them out of my house. Like, sorry, but I'm closing the path. You're going to have to take another route. So I knew that what the girl was seeing was probably real.
Yeah.
And so I went to her and I made sure that she understood, because she's a little girl. I said, do you see your granny or aunt? are you sitting on a chair? Do you feel it? Are you in your body? Are you okay? Okay, now we're going to take this being and we're going to invite, doesn't matter if it's Jesus or Buddha or an angel or security guards. I don't care who you use as your image. We're going to carry this being to its, his, her, their next highest and best good.
Okay.
And the energy that they're taking, they're using, because that's usually what they want, is they want to feed off of your energy, is that what I do for myself is that when I let this energy go, I give it up as a gift to the spirit, to God, and I say, please use this energy through me in whatever way will best serve.
Okay.
And so instead of letting this being feed off of me, I'm going to feed something higher than that.
That's good advice. Even before I had this near-death experience, there's been a shadow figure plaguing me. It goes around my bed, it jolts the bed, I wake up and it disappears.
Yeah, the thing is, instead of fearing it, it's basically blessing it. It's basically saying, look, I get it. You want something from me, but I'm not giving it to you. I'm sending you with guidance, with protection to your highest and best next good, your next stage of development. And I actually got an opportunity to look at my double, if you know the concept of the double, the
Yes.
doppelganger.
Yeah.
My own shadow was so terrifying, so ugly, so grotesque, so cruel, so vicious that I was cowering in bed again with the blanket over my head, not wanting to look at it.
Yeah.
It was a personification of me, right? My own shadow. And it was terrifying me. I was shaking. And I realized that if I did not look at it, if I did not confront my fear, I'd be running from it for the rest of my life.
Okay.
And so I had to confront my fear, look at it right in the eyes. And I was trembling. I could hardly breathe. I was literally petrified. And I looked at this ugliness that was me and that was powering me because I was afraid to look at it. And I looked at it and it lost all its power. And instead, I got the power. It became part of my creativity.
I myself, I seen my husband's doppelganger, and I've seen mine directly in my face. I've had experiences since I was a little girl.
You're very brave.
Thank you. The one thing that does bother me, and I've talked to many people to try to get this out of my house, and I have a picture of it. There is actually a demon in this house. I'm surrounded by suicides. I'm in an area where the Algonquin Indian was, and they were horrifically violent. So I don't know if that plays a part in it, but.
Well, yes, it does, Jen. And you might be that you're doing a great service to clear that area. I mean, we are looking at violence on the planet, not only now, but through historically. And, are we called on to do anything about that? Or is it just something we deal with? That's not a question I can answer for anybody else. I can only answer it for myself.
Right.
I believe that there is I believe there is a future for the human being that is consistent with a healthier life.
Yes, I believe that too.
I'm choosing my words very carefully so that I'm not setting up,
It's okay. I understand. Forgot what I was gonna say. Oh yeah. I wish my camera was working because I painted a picture of my experience as well. So hopefully if I'm in come to another meeting, I'll have the camera on and I could show it.
Well, you're very lucky that you have this Chicago IANDS group, and you might want to reach out to the larger IANDS community so that
Okay.
you have people that you can talk to, and you can have meetings that you can go to. Some of them will be by Zoom. There are a lot of websites available. And you know, this is 5% of the population have had near-death experiences.
Yeah.
So
At
if
least.
that's a large,
At least.
go ahead, Diane.
At least.
At
I
least.
wanted to mention too that Spiritual Awakenings International is having their conference this weekend, and there's lots of good stuff available on that. Go to spiritualawakeningsinternational.com and you can find how to get on to it. It's this weekend. I think it's 3 days.
When I was in the hospital, I had 5 doctors, and every one of them, they would come in the room every day and they would tell me, we don't know why you're alive. We don't know why you don't have complete permanent organ damage, but they keep calling me Miracle Girl. So,
Have you read Anita Morjani's Dying to Be Me?
no.
I highly recommend that. She
I do
was,
too.
yeah,
Okay.
and her interpretation of her experience is, for me, the closest to my understanding. I
Okay.
just love how she incorporated her experience, and she was at death's door.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll have to look at.
Morjani, M-O-R, I'll type it in.
It's MOORJANI. Anita.
I just typed it in.
Oh, thank you.
Name of the book is Dying to Be Me.
Great.
Okay. Thank you very
Great
much.
title. Love that title.
Excellent.
Wish I'd taken it.
Well, when also I was in the experience, I had the most peaceful, calm, loving feeling that I cannot compare to anything I've been through on this earth. And I wish I could explain it to other people that haven't had an experience. And like you're saying, trying to explain it, the words kill it for sure. So,
I can't explain it, but I can practice it.
right. Yes. And I'm, really trying to be a better person. I many years, I've been through, I was through domestic violence when my daughter was younger, and I've been through a lot of things. I've had a lot of experiences, but I learned from them. I don't sit and wallow about them. I'm learning from what's happening to me.
May I share with you something I shared with a client, a man?
Yes.
He was feeling that he was really failing as a father, as a husband, and everything. And he did accidentally endangered his son's life, and he was guilt-ridden about that. And his name was Nick. And I said to him, Nick, if you were a batter and you wanted to be a great batter, would you want somebody just lobbing easy pitches in? He said, no. I said, well, why not? He said, because I'll never improve as a batter. I said, would you want somebody throwing spitballs and fastballs and curveballs at you? He said, yeah. I said, why? So that'd be a challenge. I said, there you go, hon.
Yeah. I'm told a lot by, family members and other friends that, I can't believe what you've been through, and you're so strong. And, it's nice to hear that, but also I'm going through it.
Yeah, right. That goes back to I'm deeply spiritual until I've got a pain in my calf.
Yes,
Yeah, and I don't like that challenge.
right.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
It kind of
There-
stops me
there-
in my tracks.
There's a meme going around that being human is the hardest thing I've ever done.
Oh, for sure. Yes. I know that when I pass, I will have family members there, and I know that I will go to a loving place, and hopefully even better than where I was. It's something, I really want to be able to be a part of something for the good.
You are.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. Wow. I have felt so blessed to be able to do this meeting for all these years, and it continues to be an amazing blessing. And I'm so glad you all were able to be here today. Does anybody have anything left that they need to add? Mary, did you say something? No. Okay. Well, as I said, I don't know exactly what's going to be happening in the near future. We've tentatively taken July and August meetings off the calendar, just for a little R&R and recalibration and reconnection, and hope to come back on September 10th. Meanwhile, keep referring to the website or refer to the monthly email, which I probably will still continue to send out so you know where we are. And we'll see what happens. In the meantime, pull the light in. Pull the light in.
Shoulder
then-
to shoulder, people.
And then pass it out to everyone.
Hold the field.
Hold the field.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sharon, for joining us today. It was a wonderful discussion. If anybody wants to watch it again, it'll be up on our website soon as Vicki can get it up, and it'll be accessible to everyone. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to call or email. We hope to see you again soon. And if you have a thought, we request a $20 donation. We've never charged for our meetings, but we do have ongoing expenses. We support children in Nepal, and we also have monthly expenses for our the services that we use for email and so on and so forth. So we'd appreciate it if you can make a donation. You can do it through the website, chicagoiands.org. So thank you all for joining us. And we will say goodbye.
Thank you, Diane.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.